these are one of the things, where a person gets hysterics on the air, and you'll just have to...
This is Dick Clark, and you're listening to radio personalities breaking up over their own bloopers. Bloopers you'll hear throughout this album. By the way, let me suggest that you listen to both sides all the way through once, and then go back and pick out your personal favorites. Bloopers you'll want to listen to and laugh along with over and over again. So settle back, turn up your stereo, and let's have some fun. Let's begin our fun trip with a listen to the news. Now, because the essence of the news is immediate and fast-breaking, it's almost always done live, so you don't have a chance to correct your mistakes. Let's try some quickies here. For example, network newsman Dick Culp doing a story about perishable food goods.
While striking dock workers vote on a union leader's recommendation to move perishable food goods.
What did he say?
Perishable food goods.
That's what I thought he said. You try saying food goods 50 times and see how well you do. Or try this one from Scott Shurian on a story about a dock workers' strike.
John Sullivan, who hopes there will be a settlement to the dock workers' strike soon.
Now, there's no way to call those tongue twisters back. Not when you're live on the air. Now, here's one. It's a story about an accident involving two trains from newscaster Sam DePino.
About 50 persons slightly hurt this afternoon when two rapid transit trains in Chicago collided. Police say one of the trains was standing still, the other was stationary.
I don't think Sam ever figured out that one of those trains had to be moving, but here's a newsman who knew he'd made a big mistake the instant the words left his mouth.
Small minority groups had terrorized an official of Boston's Statler Hitler.
Now, tongue-twisting one word is one thing. It usually, sort of goes by very quickly on the air. But pity the poor newscaster who's paid to deliver the news with a voice of authority, and then gets into a story that produces the giggles. The late Merrill Muller was one of the best newscasters in the whole business, but one day, live on the air, he read this story.
Dr. Harry Bunk Jr. of Menlo Park reports the first successful toe transplant in the United States. Dr. Bunk says if all goes well, Carl Tagler, 30, will soon be using his right toe as a thumb of his right hand.
Now, he got through the story all right, but his director thought it sounded funny, so he quickly took off his shoe and his sock, he took his jacket off, and he stuck his bare foot through the sleeve, and he waved it through the studio window. Now, listen as Muller looks up, sees this, and tries to finish the newscast.
Establishing 2 national birth control centers to make family planning a reality within 5 years. I'm Merrill Muller in Los Angeles. That's the news. The hour on the hour throughout the day from American Information Radio.
Lowell Thomas, the legendary news commentator, had a very tough time keeping a straight face on some of his stories, and this has got to be one of his classics.
About a new book called Diet or Die. Author, Mrs. Celesta Geyer, perhaps better known to millions of Carnival fans as the one-time Dolly Dimples. Remember, the world's most beautiful fat lady? That was the billing Mrs. Geyer used when she weighed 555 pounds. Count them, 555 pounds. Now svelte 122. She tells in her book how she did it, following the advice of a doctor who told her after a near-fatal heart attack to
All right, now listen, here he goes, and remember, he's on the air, live.
Willpower, said Mrs. Geyer, adding that her own willpower was strengthened by the memory. Well, anyhow, she said that her fat friends from Carnival Life died at an early age, later buried from the back of a truck. Those are her own words. Why truck? Because in Mrs. Geyer, they were too big for a hearse.
It's live on the air. He can't stop, obviously.
Oh.
The blooper side of Lowell Thomas and the news. Now here's one from the two-man news team of Bob Arthur and Ken Minyard in Los Angeles.
Cleveland, a newsboy's testimony that he had seen an anatomy professor and his wife perform a sexual act has resulted in the professor being charged with involuntary manslaughter. Seems the last time they tried it, this gets very complicated. The last time they tried it, the rope slipped from the wife's ankle and she fell to her death. Go ahead, Ken.
Washington, President Ford is expected to extend his amnesty program for draft evaders and deserters for at least a month. I'm sorry, that is really not a funny story, but it sounds a little awkward.
It did sound a little awkward.
Bob Arthur, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
I'm not sure. Have a good day anyway.
I think the funny thing was trying to see Bob get out of the story.
Well, I'm sorry I ever got into it.
Jim Simon joins me in 5 minutes.
Maybe.
And so our ongoing series continues. Here it is. One of the most celebrated artists, Bob, of the 1920s.
Yes.
Was a Chinese painter named Wang Ernan.
Wang Ernan.
The famous Wang Ernan. In answer to the question, how's your Wang Ernan?
You sure you want to go on with this?
No.